I know that Ron has said on occasion that he wanted to get one album recorded and released, and I think probably Chris felt the same way, that sounded how we wanted it to sound, because Ron and Chris produced this album, Odyssey and Oracle, whereas we'd always worked with a producer called Ken Jones, who we felt was always trying to re-establish the sound of She's Not There, always trying to get that sound again rather than moving on. So I thought, although the Philippines, we've just come back from this huge Araneta Coliseum in Manila, as you rightly said, it's huge audiences and of course making absolutely no money. It was a little bit heartbreaking, but it also been a wonderful adventure. So I remember coming back and feeling not too despondent really, when we went into the studio to record this album. CBS gave us £1,000, which even in those days was a very small amount of money to record an album. We managed to get into Abbey Road, and I've never understood how we did that because they were EMI studios at that time.
John Coroni, our publishers.
Our publishing, yeah.
And only having that budget gave you the opportunity to say, well, Chris and Rod, you're producing, because you couldn't afford to produce.
The reason was we were never allowed to go to the mixing sessions before that. It was old school, basically. We went and did all the recording, the overdubs and everything like that, but we weren't allowed in the mixing sessions. The old school idea was basically the groups would interfere with the sound.
So the mixing sessions, to explain what that is, when all the recording's done, it's sort of like a sweeping process, that, okay, we've got all the recording done, now can we put any echoes and reverbs on here, and it could really change how the record sounds, but we were never allowed to be in the room when the mixing process was going on, until Odyssey and Oracle.
How confident were you, Chris, that you could co-produce with Rod together and get that sound that you wanted?
Well, we were the writers, and we knew what was wrong as far as we were concerned, but we thought we could do a better job than had been done already. And because I think the musicians and writers know more what it wants to sound like. Even Colin will agree, basically, it never sounded like us.
Because that first album had quite a few covers on, but some original songs as well. You were doing R&B covers and a Motown cover and so on and so forth. And then you had quite a few singles in the UK, sadly, weren't into the top 40 to follow up from She's Not There. So you had sort of confident that you could still write, and this was a big chance to sort of prove everybody wrong, was it?
No, just we want to hear our songs better as we heard them when we wrote them.
Okay. So tell us about how you started to write a song and the songs came to this album. You wrote 7 of the 12, Rod the other 5, and you're a bass player. You didn't write them on the bass.
No, you can't write a song on a bass.
Absolutely.
It's either guitar or keyboard or piano, simple as that.
And
then we went to rehearse together.
yeah, but take me through the construction a bit more. Just drill down into
Writing.
Yeah, did you write lyrics first, or the ideas for a song?
All together. I mean, there's tunes. The ideas for songs come from a rhythm, a chord, a word. You don't know what it. I wish I could know because I could market it all, but I don't know how it happens. It comes from out of the sky somewhere, basically.
And did it take a long time for the good songs to come, or sometimes you work on them for days and days, or you get stuck, or do they come very quickly?
Well, either they do and they work immediately, or you have to really work at them. You get an idea, then some little part, as McCartney used to say, you get an idea of a song that's something's not quite right, you put it in your fridge and go back to it later, and then you suddenly find a way to make it work.
And how do you write them down? Do you read music, or you just sort of note the chords?
Well, I write the chords down, I can't remember whether they used a tape recorder or not, but I don't think they worked in those days.
Because then what I'm driving at is then how do you present it to the rest of the band, and obviously to Colin?
Well, we play it with the band, and they make their mind up if they like it or not, simple as that.
So
Rod was the main lead of the thing, so you had to get ideas past Rod, to be quite honest.
Right. He would occasionally change a chord or two of yours.
Oh yes, he would do.
You wouldn't dare alter any of his stuff, I'm told.
Of course I would.
Yeah, you would.
Well, it's a game.
So you had what, 12 songs which you then started to rehearse before you
No.
went down the road?
No, we didn't have to. Colin will remember better than me because my memory was going, but we rehearsed in a little village hall the songs before we went into Abbey Road. We only had 3-hour sessions in Abbey Road, and so we had to be absolutely perfectly correct. We had to rehearse the songs through, go through all the routines before we went into the studio.
Where was that village, or was a village hall? Any idea?
I booked it. I'll be honest, I was bringing around village halls. It's not very rock and roll, is it? Bringing around village halls, and I can't remember. You know, it could be something like Cuffley or something like that. I remember there was a lady there who used to do sweeping and mopping and everything, and she was our audience for the whole time we were there. And she never said one thing. She used to stand there and watch us, and I was thinking, please say you like something. Please.
I like my mother.
An audience of one is hard to break to.
But you also rehearsed in Rod's parents' house.
That was earlier. But I can just go back to that in a minute, but it was so important for us to record extensively. Because we had such a small recording budget, we knew the songs we were going to record, we knew the keys, we knew the arrangements, we were just looking for a performance. And we recorded incredibly quickly. Because, you know, the money was going to run out. We knew that. Before that, we recorded in Rod's house, and famously he said that his poor neighbour was on nights. we would be practicing in the afternoon, and he never ever complained, but apparently later on he had a very serious drink problem. I think we might have been partly responsible for that.
So you rehearsed, and you rehearsed, and you rehearsed. And the
Song by song.
Yeah, and the regime, as you say, in 3-hour blocks was quite strict. Was it men in white coats, the engineers around in Abbey Road at that time?
Yes, they all had their uniforms. The engineers who were working the recording booth, they all wore collar and ties. It's only looking back I realised that they did. And then the technical support people all wore white coats. It's very regimented. And then there were these guys that used to move equipment around, and they could only wear brown coats. It was really funny. And you started at 10 and you went to a 1, you had to stop at 1. And then you went from 2 until 5, and then you had a break. And you went from 7 to 10. And particularly in Studio 3, because there was a block of flats right next door, and it wasn't very well soundproof, you had to stop at 10 o'clock because they would complain about the noise. So it was very strange atmosphere thinking back. Just very strict, very strict.
So you did a lot of these songs in what, 3 or 4 takes?
Yeah.
That's probably right, yeah.
And you played live. Did you put down the backing track of the instrument and you sing over it?
No, we did actually. If I could just say, this is all a long time ago. So what we might remember, we're making up. I hope that we sound convincing. From memory, they did do the backing tracks.
I remember it basically, we were on 4-track, and it was bass, drums and guitar on 1 track, keyboards and keyboard things on the 2nd, Colin's vocal on the 3rd, and harmonies on 4th. That's how we did it, it's just 4-track.
But when you got in there, you
Yes.
found there were a couple of extra instruments you didn't know were going to be there. Notably being used by the Beatles who just finished recording
Sgt. Pepper.
Just a couple of days before, unfortunately we didn't meet them. And so they mostly recorded in Studio 2. You may have seen pictures of that. There's a famous sort of staircase, wooden staircase going up to control it. This is their room. It's really bizarre because if you want to check on things that you're playing, you have to go up this great long staircase to get into the control room to see what it sounds like. But we were in Studio 3, which they did use from time to time. And when we went into the live room, there was the mellotron that they'd just been using, which Rod jumped on. And if you listen to Odyssey and Oracle, the mellotron is all over it. And if they hadn't left that behind, it would have been a different album. And there were maracas and tambourines, and we were huge Beatles fans, and so to be picking up these instruments and knowing that they just used them before, so it was a real thrill, you know, and it was very energising because you realise you're in the big time.
Yeah, but I mean, having rehearsed so hard and then thinking you got the finished article in that British Hall auction, you then had to make some modifications then when you had the Mellotron.
Modifications were the Beatles knew that America had 8-track recording and we didn't have it in England, and they asked the engineers if they could work out a system where they could have more tracks. So the engineers had worked out that if they put 2 4-track machines together and link them up by a sync track, you'd have another extra 3 tracks because the other one you only had 3 tracks available. And that's the system they used.
And we did too. I mean, we benefited from that. So in fact, we were recording on 7 tracks, weren't we?
Yes.
So you said you didn't have 12 songs. Did you write a couple of songs while you were in the studio?
No.
Well, certainly Time of the Season was written very, very late.
Okay.
It was the last song we recorded, and it was the last song that was written. And I think we might want to talk about it track by track.
We will,
but I
yeah.
mean, there's this story of Time of the Season was only finished in the morning, and I was struggling with the.
We'll come on to that when we get to it, shall we? Because it's a very interesting story. So I think it's time we play you track number 1, which is written by Ron Albans. Originally called, I think, Prison Song, but this is Care of Cell 44, yeah?
It was also called, to start with, I think this is anyone of a sensitive disposition, please don't listen to this. I swear to you, this song was called Care of 69, and then it was altered to 44. So,
And this literal one, in the form of a letter from a lover to their partner who's in prison, of course, anticipating a reunion. But the title was not in the lyrics, which is interesting. Let's hear Care of Cell 44. It's got a great melody, it's got great harmonies, it's got great vocals, it's got energy which builds when you come on that sort of more powerful note, sort of a third of the way through, don't you think?
yeah, I mean, I always thought that was the most commercial track on the album, and it was released as a single and died an unmitigating death. So I don't think I would have ever had a career as an A&R man in a record company, but I think it's a great song. Rod wrote it. It's wonderful, the juxtaposition between the really rather sad lyric and a very jaunty melody, and I think that's really intriguing.
It's kind of a strange sort of idea for a song, or a theme for a song too.
It really is. I mean, I think it's unique. I think it's a great song.
I wrote it as well.
Good idea for Rod, that was excellent.
Yeah, and there's a little, I'll tell you what, between that and the, I know this, I've been tipped off, and I can hear it, between the mono and the stereo, there's a little edit in that. For some reason, I think they took half of the last verse out. So if you compare the mono with the stereo, you'll find that there's a little bit missing on this. And I can only presume that maybe the record company did that, because records had to be short, singles had to be short in those days, and so I don't remember ever being asked about it, and I certainly remember it.
No, do I?
No, but there is a little edit.
This is the new remastered mono version.
Yes.
I wanted to be, without being too technical, could you explain why they wanted to put it in stereo, why you've gone back to mono now? Because everybody at the time would have thought that you get wider separation and the sound is better in stereo. That's not the case then.
Well, basically, they didn't have anything in stereo thing up till then. There was only classical records, and not many people had stereo record players. And they only had 4 tracks, so it was mono was the obvious choice. And then suddenly stereo they suddenly said to us, you know, stereo's becoming commercial. Can you mix it in stereo? After we did it, and we didn't have no money left, so Rod and I had to pay for it ourselves.
Really?
So it was a very last minute thing.
Yeah.
Stereo hadn't been mentioned until Rod and Chris presented the mono version of the album to CBS, and they said, yeah, this is great, but stereo is just starting now. We'd like it in stereo. And so, as Chris just said, they had to put the money up and try this new experience of stereo, which probably, if they had a bit more experience, if people knew more about stereo at that time, perhaps it could have been a bit more effective. But I think probably this album sounds better in mono, and it's certainly the way that it was mixed, and it was the way that we heard it.
And the remastering makes it what? Clearer and sharper?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, with the bass and the treble.
You can do a lot more things nowadays with the mastering of it.
It was called chamber pop or psychedelic rock or baroque rock. I don't know whether those labels were around in 67, 68, and what they mean to you.
It was called a dismal failure as well. Because it was completely ignored by all reviewers, except for wonderful Penny Valentine in Disc. I remember she said it was really nice. And Kenny Everett, if you remember Kenny Everett, he loved it. It was totally ignored this album. It has been categorised as different kinds of music, but I think that with things like the rock or whatever, I think people were quite influenced by the artwork of the sleeve.
Might have been, yeah. I think so.
It looks very flower powery, you know. But I'm not sure that the music is. How we used to record an album was we've got the best songs we could get and we recorded them to the best of our ability. We never followed trends, and that's it. It's very simple up to a point because you've got to write the songs. But so we weren't trying to make it any particular kind of music.
You heard Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys maybe from the year before, and some sort of Beach Boy type harmonies in that first track. That's not a criticism at all. But then of course Rob was a choir boy and he was great at harmonising with you, Colin, wasn't he?
Very good, yeah.
Yeah, it's harmonising with all of us. Apart from the fact keyboard players are usually good people to work out harmonies, but Rob was in a cathedral choir for a long time. There's a great harmony in it. And people could never work out our harmonies because most people, one person will sing the melody, one person will sing fairly above and one person will sing fairly below. But with us, we had slight harmony limitations, perhaps I should say, and that I had got the slightest idea what I was doing. I mean, I ended up being the lead singer quite by chance. We might go down that later on. So when we did a song, Rob would say, when we got to the chorus, which is where usually the block harmonies will come in, he would say to me, you sing what you think is the melody. And because I've got quite a high voice, I would often sing the top harmony. That's magical. We'd sing that a few times, I've got it in my mind. And then he would try and get a fairly simple harmony for Chris. Because Chris has got to play bass.
But I'm thick.
Because Chris has got to play bass and sing at the same time. So often your harmony would be close to one note, wouldn't it?
Bit more than that.
And
what chose the in-between parts?
But the thing is, because we've done it like that, Lord would have this incredibly complicated harmony in the middle. And when people try to copy it, they can't work out what we're doing, because I'm singing the top harmony, Rod's going like that to fill out all the holes. And Chris is going.
Bit more than that.
That's all right, I know what upset you. This is a light-hearted romp.
Well, Atkinson do some backing records.
One song.
Oh, we'll come to that.
There was one
Yeah.
magnificent tune that
We'll come
all
to
of
that.
us, and you ran this also.
Yeah. And also, you were playing on bass, different melody from the main melody of that song, which has been likened to what McCartney did, I thought.
Yes,
Which
yes.
is pretty high praise.
But most Rod songs, he dictated what the bass was based to be because it was in left-hand his keyboard, you see. So it was great help for his songs, especially working out the bass line, roughly the bass lines, the fills and everything, because he wrote it.
I mean, there's so many layers to that song, and such a lot going on as you described so well. I'm wondering, when you first heard that in the village hall or at the rehearsal room, did you have to modify it quite a bit, or you built it up as as you played it through several times, you thinking, oh, let's go in that direction, we can do that with that, and that.
Oh, I remember Rod knew it from the beginning.
Yeah,
He
right.
told us.
Yeah, I think he got the musical picture of what was going to
Yeah.
happen. With his songs, he didn't just write the song, he knew the arrangement. And as he introduced it to us and we did it.
Okay, well, let's go on to track number 2, which is another Rod song, A Rose for Emily. Very summery, but sort of melancholic, and I'm not sure that Emily got any roses in the end.
But I don't think she did walk out.
No, let's listen. I think that's so beautiful, really. What can you tell us about Emily? Was that song based on somebody Rod had known or seen, or was it?
No. I'm missing a vital link in this story, but hopefully someone will be able to help me from the audience. It always intrigues me, the story on this song, because Rod woke up one morning and with the confidence of youth, he said, I'm going to write a song this morning. And he walked downstairs in his parents' house and he sat down on the piano and he saw this book.
I can't remember who wrote it.
No, does anyone know who wrote A Rose for Emily?
That was the title of the book too.
I think it's a short story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something, I asked this question to an audience the other night and someone did.
I got it, but I can't remember the name, but I bought it and I got a copy of it.
Okay.
Well done, sir.
Well, yes, yeah. Anyway, so it's a very famous story written by a very famous author who none of us can actually remember.
Is it Faulkner? William Faulkner.
Okay. Checks in the person. And so that's what happened. He saw this title and he sat down and he wrote that song, just like that. And I think it's extraordinary that someone can do something like that.
Yeah. So then he would sing it to you, and you get
Yes.
the melody, and then he would give you the words, and off you went.
Absolutely, yeah. That's how we did it. Yeah.
That must have not taken too long then to record that one.
I'm trying to remember. I think there's some high notes in it. No, it was fairly quick. But I seem to remember our drummer, Hugh Grundy. He was getting a bit impatient with me because it does sound very simple, but there's some quite high bits in it. And so I think I did it 3 or 4 times. And I remember him getting quite stroppy. Calm down, Lee.
You've only got 3 hours.
Yeah. Yes, we've got 3 more songs to do. But no, it was very quick.
Okay, let's go to number 3, and this is the first of your 7 compositions, Chris. Maybe After He's Gone. It's about longing that defies the odds. So it's in a sense it's a breakup song, and the person that's been dumped hoping that he gets back with it.
Yeah, I can't remember it was. Embellished it.
Maybe After He's Gone, track 3. That's the first time on the album really that we're hearing some lovely drum rolls and fills from Hugh, and the acoustic guitar I'm assuming from Paul.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And your bass from
It's a song basically about 20-year-old love lost, basically.
Yeah.
You know.
But a real group sound there, and but again
We were a real group.
yeah, peaks and troughs, a bit of melancholy, a bit of upbeatness to it.
Yeah.
It's got everything in there, it seems.
Yeah.
What do you think hearing it again? I know you've done a couple of these sessions, or one other session like this before.
I've never talked about this song in particular, but like this way. So
Good.
yeah, it was just an early teen, not teenager, in my beginning 20s then. So basically, love lost, being romantic, and everybody was looking after girlfriends at the time, looking for girlfriends at the time.
So what soul in your voice, Colin? Anything?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very soulful song. It's a lovely song of Chris's. Listening to it now, I remember we first played this album live. Because the band broke up before this album was ever released. We first played it live in 2008. And
40th anniversary.
40th anniversary. And we played it at Shepherd's Bush Empire. But before then, we played it at the Stables as a sort of a
Preview gig.
yeah,
Warm-up.
that sort of thing. I was just listening to it then and I was having a little nervous breakdown because it's quite a tricky harmony bit at the end. And I went completely wrong at the stables. I don't normally do this. Absolutely right, it was really obvious, I couldn't cover it. And so that it flashed back to me in a moment of deep embarrassment as I listened to it just then. Everyone else was singing something else, and I was singing what people in the audience probably thought was a completely different song. And I was left, we used to call it glass trousers when I was young. I was left on the stage singing something completely different. So that's what I was thinking about while I was
Very handy.
yes. I don't recommend glass trousers.
Did it take a long time to get right in the studio then, or not?
I don't think so. No, none of these things did.
We had 3 hours.
We just mashed them
It's
out.
like when I get 3 minutes or 10 minutes with a guest.
Yeah.
Puts pressure on you to ask
Yes.
important questions straight
Well, I
away.
think you do what you've got to do, don't you, really? And I don't think it took a particularly long time. Again, we knew what we were going to do with it. We weren't making it up in the studio. It had to be made up earlier on, but in the studio, we knew what we were going to do.
Okay, let's move on to track number 4. And this is, again, your writing, Chris. It's called Beechwood Park. Of course, that's the name of the school near to the village of Markyate, just off the old A5 between Flamstead and Dunstable. And your parents owned the village stores in Markyate, didn't they?
That's right, and I used to have my dad deliver the groceries to this girls' school. I was still a young man.
Sounds like a good
Private school, well educated, so well off
And
students.
I learned to drive there as well because it was private road, you see.
Right.
And basically, I thought it was a great atmosphere, and I taught my mother to drive. She had a license, but she couldn't drive because she got it before you had to pass the test. So I took her up and driving, and Country Lane, the whole idea of the place just came back to me through a song idea.
They're quite good grounds there.
Oh,
They
yeah,
have wonderful
yeah.
greenery all around.
Absolutely.
And did you then sort of go up there, sort of walking and maybe getting exercise and maybe meeting some of the students?
Exercise?
Some of the students or not?
No,
Just
no,
good delivery?
no, they weren't allowed. They
Okay.
were girls' school, private girls' school.
Right. And so
Brought borders as well, so they, you know,
they couldn't
Don't
want to
go anywhere
mix with
near.
men or boys?
no, never, no.
Okay, I went to
Except when we did the song, one of the teachers came down and complained to my parents at the local shop saying, how dare you use the name of our school, Beechwood Park.
Right. It's you sort of reflecting on summer days again.
Absolutely.
Okay, and growing up obviously, as you
So
said.
the romantic idea of Beechwood Park.
Let's hear it. Beechwood Park. Again, a song that is so different from the other previous 3. Every song we've had so far, they all sound different, don't they? Which is important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And intentional, of course.
Well, again, I don't think there was any huge intention in the format of this album. I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but I think we just recorded the best songs we've got to the best of our ability.
Again, you've got the organ sound more prominent than...
Absolutely, I mean, you know, that's one of Rod's real strong points is the organ. But if I could just say that Paul Weller's always been a great advocate of the zombies, but in particular Odyssey and Oracle, and famously, if he's talking to you and the subject of Odyssey and Oracle comes up and you don't know the album, he will buy you a copy of it.
Alright, cool.
He came up when we first performed the album at Shepherd's Bush. He came along nearly every day. Well, the second day he said a bottle of champagne instead because I think he'd been on it already. But he came up to me and shyly introduced myself to Paul Weller. And he grabbed me in the bear hug and said, "Chris White, you're the reason I started writing songs. Beechwood Park started me on."
Wow. And it's interesting because one of the last gigs the Zombies will have ever played, because we won't play again now, was at the Barbican. I think that actually there were 2 gigs after, but all the Barbican was almost our last gig. It was a wonderful night, and we had these great guests performing with us, and one of them was Paul Weller, and he chose Beechwood Park, and he did a great job on it. You know,
He sang it?
He sang it, yeah. It was a real thrill to hear him sing that.
other great stars that have paid tribute to Odyssey and Oracle who've been influenced by it and just love it. Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters, Queen, Haim, Tom Petty, even Harry Styles, right? You know, so it just brings you right into the 21st century, really.
Yeah.
Which is extraordinary, and well, what a great compliment from Paul Weller, eh?
Absolutely.
It's fantastic. I mean, there is a sort of, I think, a mystery about this album because it was never really a hit ever. Although it sells much more now, 60 years later, than it did at the time, which in itself is strange. But it's never really been high up in any charts. And yet there are so many people, high-profile artists, who named this album as a huge influence in their careers. I'm not saying that as an ego thing for us. I mean, it just intrigues me. I just find there's a mystery about the Zombies in general, their career, I mean, and this album in particular.
It's funny because Dave Grohl, when we played in America for this album live, the band was playing locally, and they said, "Oh, he's coming to see you." He didn't come back afterwards. We thought we must have been crap, basically. But it turned out his wife met Rod later and with Dave Grohl, and he said he didn't come back because he was in tears through the songs. So
Right.
it really influenced him. You know.
Did it sell more in America, though, at the time, too?
A little bit more, but remember that in America, Time of the Season was a #1 hit single, and Cashbox, I think it was about #3 in Billboard. Time of the Season was never a hit in this country. It's been issued 4 or 5 times. It's never been a hit.
It's a travesty.
But people know it because he's been in so many films and so many commercials. And people tend to think that it was a hit because they're familiar with it, but it never was a hit.
You talk about other musicians who paid tribute to the album, but also, you know, it's rated very highly in a lot of different polls for the most popular albums or best albums ever. So NME, Rolling Stone magazine, Mojo magazine, Q magazine. It's often in the top 50 of, you know, maybe the 200 or 500 greatest albums.
Absolutely. Rolling Stone definitely named it in the top 100 albums of all time, and it was never really a hit. And that doesn't make sense. You know, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of albums released every week. To think that this album has been named as one of the top albums of all time, and it was never a hit.
And basically, it didn't sell first of all. That's why the Zombies split up, because Colin, you, and the others haven't got any money.
And they changed their name.
Which is really interestingly documented in the documentary Hung Up on a Dream. Have most of you seen that?
Yeah.
Because it's an extraordinary film, and it's up for a Grammy in the Best Music Film category, actually, isn't it? And if you've not seen it or you want to see it again, I think it's on Amazon Prime. I'll give another plug for that later. I watched it again today for about the 4th time. It's an incredible film. It really is, about an hour and 28 minutes, I think. And obviously, Chris and Colin and Hugh and Ron are in it. But there's some wonderful art of it from those early days. If you want to, you know, realise what it was like touring and being in a band in the 60s, and what TV was like and what the fashions were like. This is the perfect documentary.
It's very interesting because one of the scenes where we were playing live, no sound, it was my dad taking film at my 21st birthday party. And so that was just taken by his movie camera, no sound at all. So seeing that again was quite weird.
I bet. And also when George Harrison reviewed She's Not There on Jukebox Jury,
Yes.
and when you did this interview with Kenny Everett, as you said earlier, I think, about this particular album. I just love those the lyrics in Future Park as well. We count the evening stars, golden days and golden summer sun. And, you know, this was in 1967. I can't remember what the weather was like, but
Being young and romantic.
yeah, I get that. I was almost a teenager, but not quite. So, track number 5, another one of yours, Chris. So that's 3 in a row here on side 1, and this is called Brief Candles. Again, flickering memories, but you're holding those memories. It's very poetic, the lyrics.
Well, I got the title from a book. I can't remember who wrote that, Brief Candles. But it's like Rod picks up type. When you write a song, things started off a phrase, or even an advert on television, the phrase helps you start, come with an idea for a song. So Brief Candles was basically the idea that there's people in a bar, it's a famous American painting where they're in the bar, no one ever talking, you're looking in the window, and they look very lonely actually. So that's the expression came, that's the idea that came to me then.
Great notion. Let's hear the song Brief Candles.
That song, where there are three verses, one is the first, me the second, Colin the third.
Is that how you, when you were writing, you got it in your head?
What? So you were
Three
singing?
vocalists, yeah.
No, when we rehearsed it, we worked, actually Rob worked it all out, basically, best way to do it.
I heard She's Leading Home by the Beatles from Sgt. Pepper when that was on. Not that you'd heard that because it hadn't come out. And then maybe an intro to a Barry Manilow song. So who knows who else has been listening to Brief Candles to inspire them.
In fact, the first time we rehearsed that, no, the first playthrough when we ever did it, when we did those first 3 gigs played in, the drummer, Hugh, missed the third harmony part, didn't he? He didn't count it in. You saved it today by coming to the third verse without the middle.
Oh, right, yeah. That's it. I mean, this is playing live.
Yeah, like.
I think it's one of the joys of playing live is you never quite know what's going to happen. You've got to be on your toes. You really have. And possibly the lead singer at the front, he's got to make these decisions. If something goes wrong, he's going to work out, is he going to go with them, or are you going to plough on regardless and do the right thing and hope that they follow you? So you have to make a sort of split-second decisions, and it's quite interesting, really.
I said to you, I just, what happened to the middle eight? And we came on stage, said, what middle eight?
Oh, really?
I'd forgotten, you know. He gave up drinking after that.
Actually, yes, it's a good point. I was going to say that I always enjoyed the festive part of concerts, and I used to, it was party night every night, you know, and I remember Rod saying to me once, Steve Rodford, the drummer in the second incarnation of the band, and I, around 6 o'clock, we would say, I think the sun's going over the yard. I think you're right. And we'd have a drink. And then about 7 o'clock, we'd have another one. 8 o'clock. It's not fast drinking, but if you don't go on till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, everything, you're starting to get a bit chilled. And I always like to have a couple of beers while I was on stage. And then you want a couple of looseners when you come off. And you also, have you counted how many beers you're drinking in the evening? And I never was very good at counting, so it was a bit of a wasted argument, a bit of a discussion. But I took his point that probably between us, some of the guys in the band and me were probably drinking 10 or 11 pints in an evening.
God, it's back by the faces and Rod.
Absolutely. And you can't make snap decisions like that. If you just, someone goes wrong, I just think it's funny. I just start laughing. I've had a couple of beers. And so, as Chris said, I actually do feed on alcohol. And there is a life without alcohol.
I was going to say, what do you drink on stage now?
Water.
I think it might have been billed as the acoustic zombies at St Albans Cathedral in 2016 when you had in part 2 a string quartet.
Yes.
And I saw you afterwards, and I think, as it happened in the rehearsal, the members of the string quartet either moved the microphone to move their instruments or something, and so that affected what you were hearing in your earphones.
Yes.
You had to just obviously carry on.
I had to just plow through it. They were wonderful players, and I'm feeling the instruments were very expensive, and so they had little mics on the instruments. They're not used to that because they're classical players, and they went off to have a cup of tea or whatever before the show, and I think they put the instruments in the cases, and they took the mics off. And then they put them back on, they put them on, but not in the right place.
Yeah, so the levels were all over the shop.
Yeah, they were all over the shop. And one of them actually dropped off during the performance. So I was actually hearing when that
Player on a microphone.
could have been either, but when the microphone dropped off, it was actually making a noise like a motorbike in my ears. And I thought, can the audience hear this? This is where you have to bluff. Can they hear what I'm hearing? Because this is absolutely dreadful. And we got through it.
I thought it was good, I was in the audience.
Yeah, I thought it was good, but you're right. I
It
didn't
was
think any of that.
it was a challenge. It was fine, it was just Rob and me. Oh, poor old Roy, he went up to the organ block and he played the beginning of an Argent song. It's very dramatic on that great big organ because no one could see it. And then we had to wait for him to run down. And everybody thought it had been mine. But he played on the organs weren't idiots, but they let him play it. And then he had to run down and start the show. But it was great up until the players moved their mics.
Is that the worst thing that's happened to you on stage, would you say?
Oh, there have been so many. There have been so many. I remember playing after Tom Jones. We followed Tom Jones in the Glen Ballrooms in Llanelli. And it was really funny. It was absolutely packed. They'd all come to see Tom, of course they had. And we had to follow. We knew we were going to get killed. We knew it was going to be tough. So Ron and I went down to the pub. This is what I was thinking. Just to take a bit of the edge off the evening. Probably had a quick 4 or 5 pints and came back feeling quite fresh. And it was a revolving stage. By now Tom had played and he'd gone. We're on this revolving stage and it's gradually going around. And I was like, I thought they were going to throw things at us. I really did. Well, I was like this going around on the mic. But what had happened is everyone had gone home. I was all covered up like this on the revolving stage. And there was no one there. There were 2 people and a big black dog. And I swear the big black dog didn't pay. So we had to play our whole set to no one. But it was better than I thought there were going to be beer cans and things. But, there's so many things go wrong. Listen, we've only got one evening. If I started telling stories about what went wrong,
All right, that really surprised me because when we did a similar thing after the documentary, The Odyssey of Jude, I said something that, you're the front man, if something goes wrong, you've got to cover up. And you said, I've got ways of doing that. And you
well, I was only young then. And I was scared.
but now, nothing like that would happen.
Oh, I'd still be scared.
Yeah.
Scared. I told this story the other day. I was doing a lot of interviews on Saturday, and I had to talk about important songs. And I got the opportunity to sing "God Only Knows" with Brian Wilson. And obviously, Brian Wilson wrote "God Only Knows." It's one of the most beautiful songs that's ever been written. And I had to walk on stage at the Greek Theatre in Los Angeles, sold out with 7,500 people. He's got a wonderful band. They do all the harmonies. And I had to walk up onto that stage knowing I've got to sing one of the most beautiful songs ever written, and standing right next to Brian Wilson at the piano while I'm doing it. And it was an interesting, challenging moment. All I was thinking was, get that first note. Amen, amen. You've got to get that first note. That's all I was thinking of. I walked up to the mic stand in front of 7,500 people. And when I got close, I realised there wasn't a mic on the mic stand. That was one of the most scary moments of my life.
What did you do?
Not very much. I think I was transfixed, but I tried to look confident. And it felt like 2 or 3 minutes before anybody did anything, but it was probably about 20 seconds. So I rushed on, banged the mic in there, and then we were off. But it wasn't a very auspicious start to singing one of the most beautiful songs.
Not only that, did they? Brian, he worked period off the screen, and basically they hadn't told him that Colin was singing. So he was singing alongside Colin as well. Colin looked around, he was puzzled about, this is the first time we did it, and then you did it without him.
He follows the screen, I can't auto-cue, and if it comes up on the auto-cue, he does it. And so that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
By the time I started, he joined in. Hey, wait, mate, just because you wrote it, you're not supposed to be singing.
Were you harmonising?
It was a bit of a struggle to do this, but I don't want to speak you know, ill, but it was a little bit of a
Well,
struggle.
earlier this year I went to see China Crisis at the stables where you played many times, and they come on and they're going to play the whole of in Imperfection album, 40th anniversary. And he's quite Gary Davies, quite a comedian being from Liverpool. And the first thing he says, I wanted a radio mic. You've got a mic with a wire on the stand. So we wait in 10 minutes while he makes some comments and brings the old poor sound guy down from the control box, which is right at the top, to change the microphone. And I'm thinking, couldn't you work that out, you know, in the sound check or something? Anyway, what an interesting story about Brian Wilson. Because didn't you tour with the Beach Boys in that?
Oh, well, the original band toured with the Beach Boys, and then the second incarnation of the band, we toured with the Brian Wilson band.
Yeah.
And they were absolutely fabulous.
14-piece band, as that.
It's a big band, yeah, it certainly is. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go on to track number 6. This is the last one on side 1. And then we'll have an interval, maybe 10-15 minutes, give you a chance to maybe buy a copy on vinyl, lilac vinyl, of the newly remastered mono version of this great album, Odyssey and Oracle. Only came out last Friday, September 26th, with brand new sleeve notes as well, which I haven't had time to read, but look very extensive and I'm sure very informative. And also on CD. So come and see Eddie from Empire Records in St Albans, and he will do the business with you. He's got a big box of stuff. And track 6 is written by Rod. It's the last one, as I said, on side 1. It really is reflecting the hippie era, if you like, of flower power and the dreamy sounds of the Summer of Love in 1967, I think. And this is called Hung Up on a Dream. Number 67, I think, perfect there. And a lead guitar break from Paul Atkinson, eh?
Yeah, it was Summer of Love, and we all felt there was a little bit of hope of love in the world, basically at that time. All just generated into drugs and all sorts of weird things going on. But basically at that time, we felt the atmosphere of it. Of course, it didn't last that long.
No. But that's the song that gives the title to the documentary.
Yeah.
In fact, I think you sang that just accompanied by Rod at the start of the documentary.
No, it was something else actually. It's the way I feel inside, wasn't it?
Right.
When they were shooting the documentary, it was very early on, and we were in New York, and we just followed the crew wherever they were going, and they went into this big church, like a cathedral, you know. No one had said anything to us. I thought we'd gone for a blessing on the documentary. I had no idea why we were there. And then he said, oh, go up in the organ loft and sing The Way I Feel Inside. And that's how the film starts.
And you just had to do it on the spot, really?
Absolutely.
No rehearsal?
No rehearsal. I had no idea.
It's very natural. It looked brilliant. It was spontaneous.
Yes, it was spontaneous, yeah. It was interesting, because I didn't know what was going on, to be honest. But I think it's quite an effective start.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah. I wanted just to, again, recommend this documentary, because there's loads in it. Before this break, then, it came out in '68, the album, after, as you said, split up, which we might go to this time, but was the release date always going to be the following year? And was there a chance that it could have been pressed and released quicker, and that might have prevented you from having to split? Or can't you remember?
I remember that.
I don't know, to be absolutely honest. I think when that first single was released, Carousel 44, and it wasn't a hit, I think everyone felt, there was, it wasn't, there were no huge arguments. We just felt, maybe it's time we moved on and tried something else. I think there was a general feeling like that.
Well, Paul was going to get married, didn't he?
Well, Paul he got married, and he hadn't got any money,
That's right.
and he'd been offered a job in computers, so that was the first thing, wasn't it?
Hugh was a taxi driver, wasn't he, briefly? Hugh?
Yes, and he sold cars as well.
Yeah.
You sold insurance, didn't you?
Well, I didn't know anything about insurance, so I couldn't really sell it. But I took the first job I was offered, and it was just lifting the phone like this all the time. I answering questions about insurance, of which I know nothing. And I think that it's the one thing it really teaches you in music business is how to bluff. Because you get caught in so many strange situations. I just bluffed it. I didn't know anything about insurance. But yeah, I did that for nearly a year.
And Chris, you as one of the writers had slightly more money, I believe, but for the 2 or 3 years before you launched into Argent and set up the company together to be songwriting credits as two persons, what were you doing? Were you going back to doing, you wanted to teach art and design?
Well, I was going to be an art teacher, yeah. But basically, so Rod and I enjoyed producing the album, but then he said, why don't we form a company, a production company? And we went to CBS in New York and they said, yeah. So we got a deal when we signed up and discovered new people singing, you know.
Right, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for, as I said, for being here. Was that okay? Enjoyed that? I thought it was fantastic. Memories of being living here?
Well, I went to the grammar school in Cleveland and basically also then doing art college, which is down to a destruction centre at the back of it, but the front wall is still there.
Yeah, I was at Liverpool as well, of course, yeah. Lots of memories come back. I remember when we got the second incarnation of the band together, I think it was in 1999, it was Rod and myself, Jim Rodford, who lived just up the road, Steve Rodford, his son, who lives in Stourbridge, and I can't remember which guitarist it was at the time we came in. And it was the first time I'd been back to singing for a long time, and it felt really emotional, and mostly, for the most part, good. I remember the grammar school well, and then I played rugby with the old Veronanians, which is down Cotlandswick, it's called.
Yeah.
And I've been back there a few times, a lot of good memories from that.
Because that first rehearsal in 1961, you turned up with a broken nose.
I did, yes, and 2 black eyes. And actually, I think they were quite scared of me, which I liked very much. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. But yeah, my nose was practically in my ear on that first rehearsal.
But the fact that, you know, you've remained friends for 60 odd years is quite something in itself, really. And you might have had the odd discussion about...
No one else will have us.
about, you know, you didn't ever fell out musically, really. We'll come to the time in the season story here. But you know, it's remarkable, really, isn't it? You've all stayed in
Well,
touch.
people do say that, especially, you know, people who are interviewing us, you know, as now, because they've interviewed many other bands, and there's usually a lot of fights and yeah, there's a lot of friction, yeah. We didn't really have much of that.
It's great. Well, let's go to the start of side 2 on Odyssey and Oracle. Track 7, and Chris wrote this, it's called Changes. Tell us about this, because there's quite a lot happening here, and some good stories around it, good anecdotes.
Well, it's the only song that we all sang harmony on. So, Rod, Chris and myself were often doing that. But Paul Atkinson and Hugh Grundy sang harmony as well. Remembering that time, we're really up against time all the time in the studio. So 5 of us were around this wonderful grand piano in Studio 3 because we had to get our notes with a harmony. You just need to hope your note at the start. So we're all there getting our notes like this, and time's coming up to 1 o'clock when the session finishes. The red light's on. This is just sacrilege. You can't go in the studio when the red light's on. But the clock went up to 1 o'clock, and 2 of these guys in the long brown coats came in, the movers and groovers, and they came in, and they took the bloody piano away.
As we were singing.
We're still singing, the red light's on, we've got our notes marked on the piano, our starting notes, and these guys came in, all right, Harry, this way, Bernie, come on then, and the piano was gone.
Can you hear it on the song?
I like to think you can, but I'm not sure that you can. But I would say that we did keep singing. With all this, with the piano being moved and these words and all the codes going on, we just kept singing.
And that take is what made it to the album.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
think we might have to do it again, to be honest. When you've got sort of a removals firm coming in while you're sitting, you sometimes have to do it again.
Well, let's hear it again. It's
I want you to picture the guys in the long brown coats while you hear this track.
and again reflecting on a lost love, possibly.
It
Changes.
seems to be a reoccurring theme in your life.
I lost a lot. Yeah.
You lost a lot of love.
The end bit now was that again, the melancholy.
Yes. Yeah. And you on bongos and finger cymbals.
Let's go on to track 8. I want her, she wants me. This is Rod, and I think it's about, well, the lucky strike of attraction, perhaps. No teenage angst really from the man in this song. Life seems pretty good and kind to him. Here we go. Bit of falsetto there from either Rod or yourself, Colin, at the end, vocally.
Yeah, I think I was in there somewhere. I was trying to work out who did what there, but
Mainly Rod at the start, anyway, yeah?
well, Rod sing the verses. Yeah, he sings the chorus, but I join him on the choruses, and then I think the falsetto at the end is sort of every man for himself, really. I think we're all having a day.
Hung up on a dream, he did the falsetto on that as well. Because I was saying earlier in the meeting, or you didn't mention it at the time, and I wondered whether it was a young chorister or a treble, or it is a falsetto.
Falsetto, but I always had a very strong falsetto. He's got a really good voice, actually. So, it's never planned that I was going to be the lead singer. Rod was originally going to be the lead singer. It was, someone was asking about it, so I just quickly...
Yeah, because you were a guitarist.
Yeah. Our very first rehearsal, when I got the broken nose and my nose is in my ear, which is like us, it was at the Pioneer Club. The Pioneer Club wasn't here then, it was in the centre of town. And I was the rhythm guitarist, and that first rehearsal, we only played an instrumental. It was a classical song called Malagueña. And as Rod was the lead singer, he didn't actually do anything in the first rehearsal. It's his band, it's always been his band. But he didn't actually do anything, except we had a coffee break, just like we did just now. And there was a broken down piano in the corner. And he went over and he played Nut Rocker by B. Bumble and the Singers, which was a big hit at the time. And, Rod, even at 15, he was a fabulous keyboard player. You've got to be able to play something like that. And he just seemed, frankly, so much better than us. And I didn't know him, I don't think I even knew his name. But I went over and I said, whoever you are, you should play keyboards in the band. You're much better than us. And he said, no, it's got to be a rock and roll band. We want 3 guitars, we don't want keyboards. And I didn't know him very well, I couldn't argue with him. We got back to Malagueña, and I was playing 2 chords. If the rehearsal lasted for 3 hours, I just played 2 chords all the way through. But I feel I played them with great panache and confidence. I wasn't very good. And then at the end of the rehearsal, I was just putting my guitar away, and I always used to sing to myself, and I sang a Ricky Nelson song, I think it was It's Late, to myself, and Rod heard me, and he said, I'll tell you what, if you're the lead singer, I'll play keyboards. And that essentially was the song list. And it's just chance. I only tell that story because someone asked me about it earlier on. It was never my intention. You may not think it with me sitting here now and pontificating, but I've always been very shy. And even just being in a band was a step beyond for me. Long before I met you, I was very shy. And So my vision was I would stand at the back of the stage, strumming and looking at my shoes, and hopefully no one would look at me and I would be safe. But then, in the process of that first rehearsal, I was promoted, so to speak, and suddenly I was in the middle at the front, which was a bit of a shock. But that's how I became the lead singer of the Zombies. I say that also because Rod is a very good singer, particularly good harmony singer, and he has a very strong falsetto, which you were cognizant of.
But didn't you came from a musical family, didn't you?
I did. I never thought about it at the time. On my mother's side, she had 5 brothers, and one of her sisters played as well. But the 5 brothers all played in semi-pro bands. They were really, really good. And you know, when I was really young, I used to listen to them play. And say at Christmas, we had a dance band because they were progressive friends around as well, and they were really, really good players. So that might have made an impression on me. I don't know.
And also, you sang in a choir in a church in Hatfield.
No, I never sang. No, I never sang in the choir. I was picked out to sing at school.
Once or twice. See what you read in
No, it's all wrong. I was never in the choir, but the first time I sang, I was only about 5 or 6, and I sang in front of the school, well, in amongst the school. It's very important. I wasn't on the stage, I was in the school, singing for the parents and the school. And I got through the first verse of Once in Royal Davis City. I know you're impressed. And it was, I thought it was fine. But then the teacher thought, I think we can take this a stage further. And they got me up on the stage in front of the school. Again, I'm only about 5 or 6 years old. And I had to sing something I didn't really know. I know it was a hymn 113. Remember the 13, yeah. In the hymn book. And I didn't really know it. And I slowly disintegrated. Oh God, it makes me feel bad, you know. I disintegrated in front of the whole school, and that was the end of my career as a chorister. Never asked again.
So, in terms of being a frontman in this band in youth clubs and ballrooms, and you know, obviously many decades now since, and solo artists that you are too. There was no coaching. You just had to, well, not bluff, but that was the word you used earlier.
I think it's quite appropriate, actually. No, that's no coaching, no nothing. We just did it. It's the same with everyone, really.
Yeah, the Beatles and Stones, you're from that era, and Average Man, and
Absolutely.
Albans.
Paul Arnold, who was the first bass player for about a year before Chris joined, he was a friend of Rod's, and Rod said to him, he was making a bass guitar, electric guitar, in woodwork. He'd never played one. He was making it in woodwork. And Rod said to him, have you finished that bass guitar? And he said, I have actually, yeah. And he said, do you want to be in a band? And he was the first bass player, he'd never played a bass.
Extraordinary. So, Chris, when did you learn to play guitar and keyboard, as you said?
Well, I had a skiffle group beforehand and used to play at school and...
with a washboard?
Yeah, I didn't have one, no. That was a friend of mine called Dave Reed, who came from Redbourne. And we used to go out playing in pubs and things, just me guitar and him on a washboard.
Then, early teenage years.
Oh yeah.
Did you get paid for some of that?
Knuckle bus fare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't go with your parents, you went
No, on the bus.
different times, eh?
Yeah, different times, definitely.
When things got a bit better and we got a bit more professional, we didn't go on the bus anymore because Hugh Grundy got a Lambretta scooter, and he used to live in Hatfield as I did, and he used to get him on the front and me on the back with his drum kit and my guitar on my back, all on the Lambretta. Unbelievable. I have no idea how we ever got to the gigs at all. Can you imagine seeing us?
It's a musical journey.
Yeah. But I mean, you picked up those instruments naturally again, Chris. You didn't have any formal...
Well, my father played double bass, and he taught me double bass.
Oh, right.
So, but he taught me how to put a double bass at the back of a Mini too. And my uncle was an arranger for Billy Turnham's orchestra, so he played saxophone as well.
Wow. So you had quite a diverse musical
Yes, I
education.
did, yeah.
Seeing it up close and personal.
Well, those are the days when you used to have family musical evenings.
Yeah. I used to dread them in my what I used to do in puppetry and theatre with cardboard theatre. You could buy those as a kit. Next, track number 9, on Odyssey and Oracle. Chris, this is a very famous song. This will be our year. It's a lovely idea. It's a great theme, and it's still used, I know, at weddings, even.
Two of my sons got married and they played it at their weddings.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, on this remastered mono version, we're going to hear more of the horn section that maybe was slightly erased in the stereo
Well,
version.
basically, in those days, when our original producer was also a publisher, when he heard the song, we just had instruments playing, and he said you could try some brass on there, and they heated it on the mono track, but it wasn't on a separate track, so we only had the mono version with the brass in. So when we were asked to do the stereo, we had to sort of spread the stereo bass one side and treble the other. So it was never done in stereo.
Right, okay, so we're going to hear it now. This will be our year. That's a really good version, isn't it? Yeah, the brass on that. Sort of Penny Lane.
Yeah. Well, the idea was just to hope that atmosphere, be happy, you know.
Yeah, why not? And you still sing that in your set sometimes, don't you, Colin? I think?
Yeah, I think I do actually.
Yeah.
And also we talk about it's a song that's often used for the first dance after a wedding. My daughter broke the news to me a couple of years ago. Firstly, she's getting married, and secondly, she wanted that as the first song after she got married. And I said, great, I think it's a fabulous idea. And she said, I want you to sing it. And I want to play piano. And so that's what happened at my daughter's wedding. Poor old daughter got dragged out and had to play piano. And I had to sing. It's quite a day really. I had to walk her up the aisle, make a speech, and then dip round and sing a song. God, it was worse than playing at the Palladium. I tell you, it's very nervous.
What a proud moment for her though as well. And
It was lovely. It was really lovely. And of course, it's such a beautiful song.
Yeah.
Written by Chris.
did that come quite quickly as well in terms of the composition?
Yes, it did actually. I wrote it quite a while back on the piano, and we decided to do it on the album. Simple as that. And Rod's arrangement basically fantastic. So, and Cher just did it on our last Christmas album.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that.
It's really good.
Yeah. Does she keep it at the same pace or and sing it sort of straightforward, or does she do vocal acrobatics?
Not as good as Colin.
No. From memory, I think it's pretty similar to that. I haven't heard it for a while, but it's really good.
Another one of your songs, and this is really interesting. Tell us about it, Chris. Butcher's Tale, Western Front, 1914.
Actually, it should be 1916, which we called it, but then the record company thought we made a mistake and just wrote 1914. It's part of the song. My uncle was 16 years old when he signed up. He lied about his age, and he got
Did you have to
killed.
be a minimum of 18? Really?
Yeah, and he died at the back of the song. My mother's older brother, yeah. And I was shocked by that. But basically, I read a book called The Donkeys, I think it was called, and I was driving to rehearsal when the zombies were rehearsing in Hatfield, and basically I suddenly realised that on the first day of the battle of the song, 30,000 casualties, 30 before breakfast, and I suddenly saw all the families that were missing people. So I was really upset and put aside of the road, and I thought, going to have to write a song about this. And on my Saturday job as a student, I was a butcher's boy, and I wanted one of the big bicycles, so that's how I got the idea of the butcher's tale.
Around Margate or?
Yeah, Brown Market,
Wow.
and Blunstone, yeah.
And did you say, can I sing it to Rod, or he said to you that you ought to sing it?
Well, I thought Colin was going to sing it first of all, but they both said, you should sing it, you know.
And you bought an organ from a second-hand shop for it?
Yes, pump organ, yeah. big up one. We had to press like pedals all the time, you know, and big back thing on it and everything. So when we took it to the studios, we had to put it onto our van, had to tie onto the roof of the van.
Where did you buy it from? Around here?
No, it was, I can't remember where I bought it from, but I moved into a flat. We went to a junk store, a second-hand junk thing, and we saw it and had to have it repaired, and basically that's how it happened, you know.
And you've used tone on it. That's an electronic sound which was used for mixing desks to get
That's right,
meters
yeah.
in a certain place. Will we be able to hear the tone or not?
Yeah, you should be able to, yeah, because we recorded one track and we had Rod actually round the tone up on it. There was a secret, it was on, but they used to line the tapes up in the studio, so we just put it on there because there was no synthesizers in those days.
So it's about the horrors of war, really, and the preacher in the pulpit saying, go and fight, do what is right.
Yeah.
Of course, as you say in the lyric, but he doesn't have to hear these guns.
Exactly. And funnily enough, when the album was firstly released in America, the first track they chose was Butcher's Tale, and we thought it was ridiculous.
That's
Never
a
been
single.
single because the anti-Vietnam War thing was going on, so that somebody thought we might put it to go out. It was a ridiculous song to be. It'd never be a single.
Well, let's hear it. Butcher's Tale, Western Front, which should have been called 1916. And do you know how long he was out there for before he sadly died?
I think he came home once on leave. My mother always talks about having to get with the little bath and uniform
It's a really powerful song. Is it ever been used in a film or in video?
That I'm not aware of, actually.
No. Pretty interesting video, wouldn't it? Okay, well let's go on to track 11, Friends of Mine, again by Eucharist, about eyeing up the girls on a night out and them being in love. And I like the naming of the couples in this, Joyce and Terry, Paul and Molly, Liz and Brian, Joy and Davy and a few others. I wonder if Paul McCartney heard this and he thought, well, all right, let me in. Do you remember? He had all these people arriving in his front door, didn't he?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's a
They
song
were
about
really
him.
all friends of ours.
I wondered.
Yeah. Terry Quirk who did the cover design.
If you might have time to come up to. Right, okay. Paul, was that Paul Arnold?
It's all like
Paul Atkinson.
Right.
He married Molly.
His first wife.
Oh, wow. I love this. This is, again, sort of quite emotional and you know, I guess, talking about the value of friendship.
Yeah.
Friends of Mine. So let's go on to track 12, the final one on this album, Time of the Season, written by Rod Argent. Written quite quickly, but obviously we want to find out who came up with the idea of the clap and the heart, and as is portrayed in the documentary, Hung Up on a Dream, it's quite tricky for you to get right, yeah?
Well, I mean, when we play live now, yeah, I do it.
Yeah.
So I think Rod actually directly pointed out to me that for years I've been putting the clap in the wrong place. So it can get a bit tricky because I always try and encourage the audience to join in. But I'm not always putting it in the right place myself. So I've tried to really work on this and get the clap in the right place. But on the record, it was very much a spur of the moment thing from Rod. The track, as far as I remember, was pretty much finished. And he said, you know, I can hear a sort of a clap and because of the way it had been recorded, we had a spare track. And he could just one pass, he just went in and did it. And of course, it's a real moment in the song. It's quite a hook. That thing that just a moment's thought, and he went in and did it very, very quickly.
But he was trying to coach you from the control room, wasn't he?
not the clap and the ha, because he did that. But the song had only just been finished, so I didn't really know it that well. I mean, I excuse me because I told this story quite a few times, but I was struggling a bit really. I didn't know the song very well, and Rod is a stickler for phrasing. He wants things right, you know. I used to dread when he used to say, "Can you sing that phrase more on the beat?" And I never was quite sure what he meant. We were working together for over 50 years, and I never knew really what on the beat meant. So I just
We'll get it right in one day.
yeah, I just used to keep singing it, and so he said, "Yeah, that's it." And that was fun. But with this particular one, we had this small budget. We were running out of money. The time was clicking. I had a big clock right in front of me, telling me we were running out of money, and a red light on telling me I'm recording. This is my Rod was very kindly coaching me from the control room. You're doing all this. Can you push this phrase? Can you sing this phrase on a beat? And it was starting to get a bit tense, to be honest, and I was starting to lose it, and the language just got worse and worse and worse. And I completely forgot that the control room was full of the rest of the 100 people from Abbey Road and everything. And
Look at Chris now, you remember it.
I couldn't tell you the language. I was like, shut up. Yeah. It's going on and on and on and on. Again, people with a sensitive disposition, please don't listen to this. It was going on and on and on and on. I cracked, and I said to Rod, "If you're so fucking clever, you come in here and you fucking sing it." And he said to me, "You're the fucking lead singer, you start that till you get it fucking right." But remember, at the same time I'm singing, "It's the time of the season for loving." Sing that on the fucking beat! We managed to get it. I think we got it just as the second hop, the second arm just went, and that was the end of the song. But it's just always stayed with me, that terrible language that was going backwards and forwards while I was singing this sort of wonderful song about love. Incidentally, it's all forgotten immediately afterwards, and we were at the pub and having a laugh about it afterwards. But it was a tense moment, but mostly because we were running out of studio time.
But you were a perfectionist as well. You wanted to get it right.
Well, I mean, I think all of us are the same. You know, we've never bluffed it really well. You know, bluffed some things. Sure, it's the one. But never bluffed the singing. You know, the phrases have got to be right. I don't think the song would work properly if you just approximated it. There's a right way to do it. You know.
Okay, Eddie, let's hear it. I wonder if you can hear that in the doors that follow quite soon after you mentioned that Whitlock and Charlotte or the Happy Mondays bands with the organ and that. It's just such a terrific song. Strong bass line and Tom drumming from you, eh?
Yeah, we just worked it out at the time. It felt natural to us.
It's a really unique sound or song, isn't it?
As the next song, well, the last song went to #1 in America.
Yep, in 1969.
Yeah.
A record executive, Al Cooper, said it should be released again.
Yeah. Well, you can tell a story.
Well, actually, in America, Al Cooper, who started Blood, Sweat and Tears, had just become a producer at CBS. And before he started his first day at CBS, he came over to London and he collected 80 albums that you couldn't get in America, you could only get in the UK. And he felt that Odyssey and Oracle really stood out. And in his first day of work at CBS, he went in to see Clive Davis, who was a real heavyweight in the record industry, and still is. But at the time, he was the head of CBS Records, and it was really brave of him to go in, and he said, "Whatever we do, whatever it costs, we have to get this album." It was Odyssey and Oracle. And Clive Davis said, "We already own Odyssey and Oracle. CBS already owned it. We weren't even going to release it." And Al Cooper fought for it. There's so many chance things that happened. Fought for it, and eventually it was released, not on CBS, but on one of their minor labels called Gate Records, which might have been part of the reason it took such a long time for there to be any success. But 2 singles were released, as Chris said. Butcher's Tale was the first one. I can't remember what the second one was. And then eventually, again, Al Cooper pressured him to release Time of the Season. So we owe him so much, Al Cooper. One DJ famously in Boise, Idaho, would not stop playing Time of the Season, and it just gradually spread across the country. It took months for it to get airplay, and then it started going up the charts. And meanwhile, we were in this country, and it wasn't a hit at all. I'm just getting occasional. There's no internet, so we're getting occasional phone calls. It's in the top 100 in Billboard. Couldn't believe it.
It went to number 1 on the 29th of March in 1969, and 50 years to the day later after that, in 2019, you were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We were, presented by Susanna Hoffs of the Bangles.
Yeah, fantastic.
It was an incredible evening, wasn't it? There were 17,000 people there, and it's televised, and it was all the good and the great of the music industry were in the audience, so there's no pressure. We got up and we played, and you look down, and there's all the heads of the record companies and people like Mick Fleetwood, and I can't remember who was there now, but all really famous people, and playing. They didn't all play actually, but being inducted with us was Stevie Nicks, Janet Jackson, The Cure, Radiohead, Roxy Music, and Def Leppard.
Wow.
So it's quite a bill. All really nice people, and as you rightly said, there was always a speech beforehand, and Susanna Hoffs gave a wonderful speech before we were inducted. It was a very special evening.
And as we were being interviewed later backstage, Brian May put his head down the door and said, "Oh, don't want to interrupt. I just wanted to let you know how much you influenced Queen."
Which was really quite interesting because a few years before that, when Hugh Grundy was working as an A&R man at a record company, his job was to listen to all these tapes that came in, and sometimes he'd just sort of play one song, half a song, and reject it. But there was one he heard and he thought, right, this is interesting, that's good. And he got through to the end of the tape, and he said, I'm going to go and see this band live. And he went to see this band live, and he went back to his bosses and said, you've got to sign this band. But they started negotiations, and this band wanted a certain amount of money. And CBS said, no, we can't take the money. That band was Queen. And so they went to a different record company.
That's right, and incidentally, Paul Atkinson, who's our guitarist, also worked for CBS, and amongst other people, he signed ABBA, and of course ABBA went on to...
Patti Smith?
Yes.
I think it might have been Patti Smythe, and Mr. Priest,
yeah.
He was an incredibly successful...
Bruce Hornsby.
Incredibly successful record executive.
Well, it's been a very special night tonight, and I wanted to quickly hand it over to you because I've said more than enough. So if you've got any questions for Colin and Chris, just put your hand up and we'll see what happens.
Janet Jackson's group of people were on the next table to us, and my wife told me that when we were singing our hits, you wouldn't think this, but Janet Jackson and all her entourage were all on their feet cheering and clapping hands. I thought that was quite wonderful because, of course, she plays very different kind of music. But it's sometimes the media gives the impression that musicians don't like other musicians that play different kind of music. In my experience, that's not true. Musicians like all kinds of music, and that was just a very good example of it with Janet Jackson's entourage, all dancing, singing and clapping to Tell Her Now and She's Not There. So
Brilliant. Yeah, any more questions?
I got one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that true that in the 60s, when you were touring America, you actually went to Graceland to knock on Elvis Presley's door?
Yes, it is true.
yeah.
When we walked to it, and DJ said basically, you want to go and meet Elvis? So we went up knocking the door, Graceland, well, at the gate. And we think his uncle came down and said, well, unfortunately, Elvis would love to see you. He said, but he's away filming at the moment. So come and show us, came and showed us around. And then he said basically it was the story that he got your records on his jukebox. We didn't believe it. So it was just an uncle. But what found out many years later from an Irish DJ who was an Elvis fanatic, basically. Yeah, no, so I'll stop you there. He had 3 of your records on his jukebox. We didn't know.
No. Well, it was a very interesting evening because we'd done an interview with a DJ, and he was the way he said it. He said, "Do you want to pop round and see Elvis?" That's literally how he said it. And then we went round there, and there was no security at all. If you ever go there now, it's a bit like Disneyland. He lived there with his family, and there was no security. And we just opened the gates and walked up the path and knocked on the door. It was like, is Elvis going to come out? Is he coming out to play? It was a very weird.
So did you? Yeah. Look, I went there last year, but obviously you don't get into the room. It's all sort of cordoned off. You get a good look and you can photograph everything. So you saw his TVs. I think he had 3 TV screens in the lounge, and you saw the jukebox. So you were able to walk right up to it.
Well, I'll be honest with you. There was no security. We walked up to the front door, knocked on the front door. His uncle came and talked to us, and what he said was, "Please, look around the grounds as much as you want." We didn't go in at all. I mean, I've gone back and gone in since. We didn't go in, but we did just sort of wander around.
That was another sort of full circle moment because as well when he heard Hamburg for the first time. He looked on rock and roll.
That's what we wanted to. He'd always been playing classical music until then, and that's when he wanted to start a band.
Gentlemen here.
I was going to say, the album it's always sounded like very vibrant, and you obviously rehearsed it massively before you recorded it. Do you think that recording it under such time pressure stopped you from being stale in the studio?
Maybe we didn't write in the studio.
No, I realise that, but was the time pressure like sort of pushing you to just get it down before you start getting to
Why don't we get it right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's a good point, because I think there is an energy on that album that might not have been there if we'd had limitless time in the studio. It's the advantages in recording now is you've got countless tracks. You can do it 1,000,000 times. You can tune it. You can move the vocal. You can tune the vocal, but you can move it backwards and forwards as well. You can do anything you want. Well, we couldn't do that, and
The most important thing is playing together, and it has to have that energy.
absolutely. Sorry, what I was going to say was that it's great that you can do all these things, but every note you play, you've got 1,000,000 choices of what you can do with it, and it slows everything down. Well, we didn't have those choices, and it's the same with It's Not Just Us, it's anyone of that era. You had to just go in and play it, and I think it does add an energy. But of course, you're more liable to make mistakes if you're under pressure, so you've got to control that element as well.
Gentlemen,
Guys, how did you land on the track listing order for the album? Because the first side is quite melancholy and retrospective, and then the second is more positive, and apart from obviously Butcher's Tale, which is it's quite discordant and changes the atmosphere of the album until it becomes it ends very positively as well. How did you sort of land on the track listing?
I think we had 12 songs, and I put them in an order, so the end of one was another song to put in, the balance of an album. Simple as that.
Yeah, I don't think I was involved in that at all, to be absolutely honest. It's one of the problems of thinking back. Sometimes we might sound as though we're a bit vague, but it's 60 or 70 years ago.
but in the days when we only had vinyl, we would listen to the whole album all the way through, either in a record shop, in a listening booth before deciding whether to buy it. Just occasionally, maybe we bought albums where side 1 was our favourite. We didn't put so much on side 2. But now with streaming, you don't know whether people listen to albums from start to finish. And so a lot of thinking and hard work went into the ordering. If you talk to Kate Bush about that, she'll say
Exactly the same, yeah.
Well, I can remember Chris. I can't remember you doing this on Odyssey and Oracle, but strangely enough, you did this on my first solo album, which you produced 1 year, and you used to cut out. He would write the title of the song, and you cut out a little elongated piece of paper, and he would arrange those and constantly be changing those. And of course, you have to remember what the song's like. You're not actually listening to the song. You're just moving these pieces of paper around. But I can remember you doing that. Yeah.
Any more? Couple more? Yeah. Oh, good. Go on left. Yeah.
Wasn't a big deal that the album title was actually misspelled?
Well, that was my flatmate. I'm one of my flatmates, and we were touring away. I think we were on tour, and basically he was in the studio and he did the drawing for it, basically, and we didn't notice because it was flowery that it was spelt wrong.
This is Terry Quirk.
That's right, yes. And basically, Rod came into me one day when we were sharing the flat with him, and he said, let's say it's a cross between an ode and an odyssey. So we stuck to that story. Didn't tell Colin until, what, 15 years later? 50 years later.
I made up this frankly rather weak story to try and come I got really upset because we were doing an interview one day, and it was sort of 50 years later, and Rod said, yeah, well, of course it was a spelling mistake, we tried to cover it. I went, hold on a minute, you've been telling me this story about this on purpose for 50 years, and what a skill, I believed you. So that's the thing. But also, Chris, myself, and Terry Quirk went to the grammar school, and I don't know about your spelling, but my spelling's terrible. And obviously Terry Quirk's spelling's terrible.
Actually, it wasn't. He was known as a very good speller. People had to ask him how to spell things. But he, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say it's the school's fault.
I went to the same school, sir.
Sorry?
I went to the same school.
Can you spell?
Not too bad. You can pull it for geography.
Okay, so...
Another one at the back, I can't see where they were, but I saw a hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder which of your singles you're most proud of, both from your own individual performance, but also the band's performance as well.
I think when I have to pick a Zombies track, I tend to always go back to She's Not There, because it changed our lives forever. And it's just such an... I think it's a really good song and a good record as well. It's got a sort of a timeless feel to it. And so I probably would always go back to She's Not There.
I would too, yeah.
And you talked earlier, really at the beginning of the conversation, about how Rod could build a picture of sound in his head or whatever. And in the documentary, I'll come back to that, Hung Up on the Roof, he describes what he wanted, almost 3 sections of that song to do in visual terms. I can't remember what those visualizations were, but he's incredibly eloquent about that. Yeah. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming, for being here. And I'd like to say maybe you want to come back on Saturday the 9th of May, because Colin will be doing his Believe in Miracles tour and he's playing here.
I know, yes, I know. I'm really looking forward to it, actually. We've got a really good solo band, and we'll play some zombie tunes, I promise you we will. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
And you can find all the details of those dates on Colin's website, colinblunstone.net. I was looking earlier, I think you can actually book tickets for it now already. There's a link, I think.
I think you can.
And on Tuesday the 12th of May, in Milton Keynes, Stables, where you've played many times before. Chris, you wrote a musical about all of the stuff we've been talking about, and the sort of history of the zombies, didn't you?
Yeah, I did actually. I wrote a musical about when we went to the Philippines. So basically, remember, we didn't have any work in England at the time. Tito Burns, our manager, so I could give you 10 days in the Philippines. Colin thought it was just, he said, we said, how much? He said, £100 a night. We said, each? He said, no, between you. And he took 20% or 25%, the major. And we flew over there, it was a long journey, and basically we arrived 3 o'clock in the morning to be met with thousands of kids at the airport, 3 o'clock in the morning. Rodman thought it was a famous politician on our plane.
He turned around and said, "There's someone famous on this plane because there's thousands of people out there." And then we walked in towards him and thought, "Bloody hell, they're there for us." And I thought that we were going to be playing in a hotel bar in the evenings, and I thought, well, we can get on the beach and get a tan in the day. So, as I remember, we were only getting £80 a night, and Tito took 20 as a manager and 10 as our agent as well. So we lost 30% of that anyway. And sort of back to when we first started this kind of money. Anyway, we opened to 28,000 people in the Aranesa Coliseum. It was the second biggest
Astrodome in the world.
Yeah, it was the second biggest thing in the world. And then we did a matinee 15,000 and 32,000 on the Saturday night. It went on like that for 10 nights. And even we noticed and realised that we were being underpaid. 32,000
screwed.
32,000 people. And we were getting £80 a night. And well, sorry, Chris wrote a musical about that. It goes on and on. It got worse, actually, but it's a long story, perhaps for another night.
So you wrote original songs about just that episode of the Manila thing?
You mostly used the original songs that the zombies did. You wrote a couple of songs intermittently.
But it won't be staged?
No, well, it didn't get enough following at the time.
And your son is also writing your memoir?
Yes, one of my sons is, yeah.
Tell us about that. Is that right to be published anytime soon?
No, I don't think so.
Still working on it. I mean, as I said to you once, you should write a book, Colin.
Yeah, I keep thinking about it. I've been approached actually 3 or 4 times to write a biography. But when I start writing it, it's so bloody depressing. I think I don't want to bother people with all this
That's the way to say it, Colin.
I don't want to bother people with all this darkness, you know. So if I can cheer it up a bit, maybe I will.
Yeah, the nice thing is, when we got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you suddenly realise it's nice to be in your 70s and find out you were famous in your 20s.
Well, it's just fantastic that you're still able to talk about it and remember so much. And I mean, Colin, I'm amazed at your energy. We spoke after the show of the documentary at the Odyssey in June, and then that was a Saturday night. On Monday, you were flying to America, and you did several Q&As after the showing of the film with the director, Robert Schwartzman, and then you sang a few songs.
I did, yes. It was good fun. I really enjoyed it, actually. And Robert's a great character. He sang some songs as well.
Yeah, with his band Rooney.
Yeah, and it was really, really good fun.
Your energy, I mean, you know, doesn't seem to be affected by age. You don't mind me saying?
Well, I make up for it when I get home. And I've often said that one of my great gifts is sitting very, very still for very long periods of time. And so I'm very lazy at home. But yeah, I like getting up the road and doing shows. There's an old saying, isn't there? If you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's how I feel about what I do.
A great motto, isn't it? If you're lucky enough to be able to do that. Well, look, thank you, as I say, for coming and for being here, and thank you for your questions. Any last minute additions? You've not asked a question you want to get one back?
Do you think you gave America the vibe, or did you get the vibe from America? Your songs are very American, they're all part of the culture. Schitt's Creek ends on one of your songs, it's podcast time. Did you get your vibe from America, or did you give it to them?
Well, it's an interesting question. I often thought about this because when we started, we were singing nearly all American songs, and even when we first went to America, so I think, yeah, we did get a lot of influences from America. And I sometimes feel a bit guilty about it because if you can imagine what the British invasion was like in America, it was hysterical. They were just screaming. A little bit like tonight, really. I often thought that I needn't have sung for the first 2 years of our career because no one could hear me because it was so loud. And sometimes I wanted to almost stop and say, you know, we're playing, this is your music. we took this music from you, and as Rod always says, we went through a British filter, and now we're bringing it back. And I sometimes feel a bit guilty. So yes, we did take an awful lot from American music, definitely.
I want to thank Eddie from Empire Records in St Albans as well for coming along and playing the tracks in. Give a chance to get a couple of extra Christmas presents or whatever before we shut down, and if not tonight, then you can go into his shop. I don't know if he's still here. I think it was a guy called Chris. Had these, no, not this with his partner, brought these 3 prints of the banding, which I think he told me he purchased 20 years ago, and he's given them to you, John, for the Pioneer Club to put on the wall and keep, which I think is fantastic. He's seen you probably in double figures times. He was very knowledgeable and got turned on about 30 years ago by stepdad to the music of the Zombies. So yeah, some great stories. So thank you to Colin Blunstone and to Chris White.